What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Pack Power 24/7 podcast. I'm your host, Corey Smith, and I'm here with a special guest this week, our guest host in Grayson Boone of the On Wolfpack podcast. Grayson, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. What's up, everybody? What's up, Amedeos? I hate that I could not be in the house tonight. I'm feeling major FOMO. I have actually a homemade box of pasta, so I'm going to do the best I can here at home. But happy to be here, Corey. It's a new year, 2026, and Pack Power now. That's new. It smells like a new car in here.
Yeah, I know, right? It's a little different. It's something we're still, I'm still working on. I screwed up and said the wrong name a couple times myself in the past week or so, which, when you get so used to something, it's a little difficult to kind of reroute and rewire your brain at times. But I want to make sure, first of all, we give you a proper intro because I screwed it up. And I know our people usually applaud whenever we say it. So I'm going to try that again. Welcome to Grayson Boone of the Locked On Wolfpack podcast. There we go. That felt a little more right. All right. So we're going to jump into things here in just a second, but I do want to give a shout out, as always, as you can see over my shoulder here. We're at Amedeo's. We're shooting live from here each and every single week. We're going to get back to that, doing it weekly here soon. I screwed up, and there was a few different times. Obviously, going back, I think it was 3 weeks ago, soccer was in the College Cup, and then 2 weeks ago, right before Christmas, we had some plans, and then we've had some illness in the family over the last week. So we're finally back, but I do want to give a shout out to them as always. We appreciate them for housing us here. They obviously always have on Tuesday nights. As students are getting back, if you haven't checked it out, do make sure that you check it out. The student deals that they have every single Tuesday night. So do make sure to check that out. I believe it's half off your meals. So I need to get Dave to confirm that with me, but I believe it's half off meals on Tuesday night. So if you do have a student ID, and that's not just for NC State students, that's for, if you go to Wake Tech, if you go to Meredith, you can check that out. So if you're an NC State fan, you attend any college around the area. I don't know if they take UNC student IDs or not, but they'll take just about everybody
else. They better
else.
Not.
Yeah, exactly. You show up and it's like, we might charge you double for that. So, but that's how you can make your money back on a Tuesday night if a UNC student shows up. So do make sure that you check out Amedio's. We appreciate them. So we want to give our love back to them as well. All right, let's jump into things. I wanted to flip it around a little bit because I wanted to kind of go with the team that I feel like is trending the most right now in terms of, success rate. So I want to start things off with women's basketball this time around. NC State women's basketball again, another big win over Cal on Sunday. This team has been trending in the right direction for the better part of a month now at this point. I think back to the Seton Hall win for them. That was, the very beginning of December. 6 straight wins now since that win. Camille Pierre has just been on a tear here recently and had to really step up on Sunday with the loss of Tilda Trigger due to illness. So just your thoughts on what we're seeing from the women's basketball side of things, because like I said, 6-0, 4-0 start to ACC play. Just what you've seen from them so far this season.
Man, everyone wants to talk about NC State basketball right now. Westmore said, I want my respect and I need it now. Winners of I think their last 6 straight. Seems like they're starting to turn a corner, especially at the right time. You mentioned Camille Pierre. You talked about getting what you paid for. What a dynamite player she has been up to this point of the season. I know there's some worry about Zam Jones with the ankle. Certainly hope that she will be okay sooner than later because we certainly need her as we, drift further into ACC play. But, I know there was maybe unspoken drama about what happened with AWO. Certainly wish her the best regardless. But it seems like since that point, this team has really started to pick up some slack. And, we've come to expect this from Westmore. He's going to figure out how to pull the right strings and tinker with the right things and get these ladies to roll at the right clip that they should be. But, double-digit wins, I think, in every ACC game you've played so far. You were shorthanded against Cal and actually got crushed on the boards and still found a way to win by 11 points. So, we know the makings of this team. They can be extremely dominant at times. It's just the consistency we need a lot more so coming down the stretch. But I feel pretty good about where they're at right now. Of course, certainly hope that Zam Jones will be fine.
Yeah, really quickly, I wanted to throw this up here. Kelly said, Merry New Year. So that's how long it's been since we've done one of these. Appreciate it for jumping on. And then Sam also saying Happy New Year. Charles, I appreciate all of you guys for jumping on, as always. hope to see you guys at Amedeo soon in the near future. So, well, Kelly lives in Wisconsin, so it's a little tougher for him, but do appreciate him as always for jumping on. Yeah, a couple things I wanted to point out too, just because, early on in the year, I had a couple people saying, stuff about Camille Pierre. Like, is she really, worth the money? Is she really been to where people wanted to see? And I think people mistake, her kind of, she's just a very smooth customer. She's not, somebody that's going to scream after she hits a big shot. She's not somebody that's super physical down low. She just comes away with rebounds. She gets her shot back up. She puts up points. She also happens to be leading the entire country right now in rebounds per game. She's also top, I believe for most of the year, she's been top 10 in terms of double doubles. That's slacked off a little bit here lately because NC State's been just beating the brains out of some teams. She hasn't had to play late. So you think back to the Stanford game, the Davidson game, even the Georgia Tech game, all of those games, they won by 20 plus points. She wasn't playing late in those games. So there's a reason why you weren't. Well, I take that back. Actually, the Davidson game was a little tighter than they wanted. That one ended up being a 68-59 game. But several of these games where she hasn't had double doubles because of the fact that they've been taking her out a little bit late in games. So, but yeah, I mean, you mentioned it too, the upcoming games that they have. It's all very manageable. Games against Clemson, SMU, Wake Forest, but then the meat of the schedule is going to be towards the middle of January. You have a game against Louisville, who's a top 10 team in the country right now. You have Virginia on the road. Virginia, not a great team overall, but still going to be a difficult environment given the fact that you're going on the road and playing a noon tip-off there. And then Boston College, the same thing before you get to UNC at home, which is the very beginning of February. So, yeah, it's great to be able to stack up these wins because the schedule is not going to be easy later on in the season as well.
Yeah, I mean, certainly agree. And like I said, Westmore, year in and year out, whether they struggle in the early parts or dominate in the early parts, one way or another, he's going to get them all figured out. And I want to give a lot of credit to Cadence Samuels as of late. I think she's really picked up the slack because she had some early season struggles, and coming down from UConn, maybe there's some, a lot of high expectations because didn't you play at UConn? When are we moving here? So Cadence Samuels, I think, has really been pulling a lot of the weight. And again, I hate to keep bringing this up, but if Zam Jones is out for an extended amount of time or hopefully no time at all, you need other sources for some of that offense. It could be Kaishi Lunan as well. Just a freshman. She's kind of stepped onto the scene at very important parts of some of these ball games. So, certainly hope that Tilda Trieger can only miss one game with illness, get her some Sudafed, get her back in the lineup because we got more important games to play. But you come to expect this from Westmore and his group. They're going to dominate in ACC play. They're going to be right in the mix for postseason, or at least high seeds, that is, once March comes around. So I think they're beginning to click here at the right time.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth with Kaishi Lunan too, by the way. I mean, obviously, Cadence Samuels living up to the expectations that you had for her previous to the season. But Kaishi Lunan is a player that if you're missing Zam Jones for any extended period of time, and you hope that you don't, she has been somebody that's really stepped up recently. You talked about it, obviously the clip that she's had here recently, but she's also shooting 50% from 3-point range on the season. Now, granted, she's taking less than 2 per game, so it's not a high volume, but she's also hit a 3-pointer in each of the last 5 games, 2 against Georgia Tech, obviously getting a little bit more run in that game, 21 minutes in that game. But if you're looking for somebody to step up and be somebody that, hey, we need extended minutes. I think back to a few years ago, it was the exact same thing that happened with Zaza. All right, we need somebody to step up in this role. And she took advantage of the opportunity. You might see that from Kaishi, Destiny Lunan, whichever one you want to call her. Obviously, her given name Destiny, but Kaishi is what she plays by. That's kind of her alternate personality when she gets on the court. So we'll look forward to seeing exactly what NC State women's basketball is able to do. Men's basketball, it's been a little bit of a struggle recently. You go back to, obviously you start off ACC play, in strong fashion last week. But Wake Forest, we don't know exactly what to expect from them now. Granted, the roles are reversed. Wake Forest was able to beat Virginia Tech over the weekend, which is the team that beat Virginia in their ACC opener. But man, really, really frustrating to watch what ended up happening on Saturday. NC State men's basketball against Virginia getting blown out. 76-61, and it really wasn't even that close. Like I talked about it,
Yeah.
after the game, 14-2 run for NC State to be able to make that, respectable-ish, I guess. I mean, you still got blown out at home, but your thoughts on that one? I know you guys already had a post-game podcast and everything like that too about that game, but just your thoughts on where NC State is headed after the last two games.
Yeah, I mean, that Virginia loss, it was ugly, man. There's really no way to sugarcoat that. You get out of the gates extremely slow. You don't play defense that well. You don't shoot that well. You don't share the ball that well. It's just kind of a comedy of errors there. And I think the most sinking feeling is you did start ACC play 1-0, and you looked somewhat okay against Wake Forest, even though you didn't play that well, but you still found a way to win. But to fall so flat the very next game at home is just like, all right, well, it's been red, but where's the reckoning part of this thing? When are we getting that part of the equation? And the answers are still out. They're still out for right now. So, I thought Allen Breed is a name clearly with the Trey Holloman lingering injury. I think you're going to see even more of Breed, probably especially Tuesday night. But, Allen Breed is stepping up and giving you some key minutes handling the ball. Quadir Copeland has been Quadir Copeland. He's kind of been the glue guy and also the motor at the exact same time for this team right now. Paul McNeil's been in and out at times, but if you can get him in a rhythm, he can really be a valuable piece to this team, lighting it up from the perimeter. Everybody's probably waiting for me to talk about this, but Darrion Williams, I won't harp too much on him. I won't put anything out there that'll get me blasted in the media. But, the fact of the matter is he is struggling right now. Is he, contributing in other ways that result in winning basketball? Yes, that part is true. He is helping you on the boards. He is pretty good with the assist category, especially feeding Lubin in the paint. But we're getting 7 points a game, 8 points a game, sometimes 9 points a game. That's not quite what we paid for. And I still have a world of belief in Darrion Williams. He has, 3 years of tape that suggests that he can be one of the best players in college basketball. So maybe it's just like a mental thing that he's dealing with right now, but we have got to find a way to clear that hurdle. We have got to get Darrion Williams to be the best player on our team and one of the best players in the ACC, because that is where you reach max potential for this team. And so, I hate to see him struggle the way he's struggling right now. And I thought the way that Wade did defend him, he had every right to defend his player that way. And I really appreciated Coach stepping up for his player in that right. But, was the question in itself fair? Yes, it was fair, because we're not getting the production that we assumed that we would be getting out of Darrion Williams.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason why he lashed out somewhat because of the fact that he had heard it for the previous 3 or 4 games. And, it's like an every game basis. You went over a 10-day span of time where you're like, all right, I don't have to hear about it. And then all of a sudden it's like, all right, I know I'm going to hear about it. And I think he had that prepared. I will also say this. I don't think it helped that it came from Joe Giglio, who, publicly leaked the hiring of Will Wade, who publicly leaked the hiring of Andrew Slater before Andrew Slater was actually hired, by NC State. So that certainly didn't help things. But, I will say that, I didn't think the questioning was wrong there. I just think it was, more so Wade like, all right, man, I'm waiting for that moment for somebody to ask. And he exploded. And then it didn't make things any better. I love Joe. Like I've known Joe for a very long time. I worked with him. He's one of my first jobs that I had. I was working under Joe, working for the News and Observer. But I don't think it helped in that situation. But the other thing I'll add to that too, it's interesting. You brought up Quadir Copeland. Like it's funny because going back to, early on in the season, like right before they went on the Maui Invitational, I mentioned the fact that I said, Quadir Copeland's been kind of the substitute bus driver until somebody else comes back. Well, he's been the bus driver for now going on 10, 11 games for NC State and been the guy each and every single time. He's averaging 14.1 points. You've seen, some kind of flashes of the erratic play from him, but still only averaging 2.7 turnovers per game compared to 5.8 assists. So you'll take those numbers and then also add in the 1.4 steals. So you're getting, kind of a like 6.2, I think is around the number that you're getting between assists and steals. So, creating scoring possessions, creating extra possessions compared to those 2.7 turnovers, you'll take that on an every game basis, especially when it's a guy that's shooting, 56% for you. Also, shooting over 53%. I don't know how those numbers are still adding up for him, especially given the volume of shooting that he's had. But it feels like at some point the steam's going to slow down for him, but it just hasn't. And I think that's been what's been able to elevate NC State. Now you're just waiting on other guys around him. And I agree with you. Darrion Williams from a scoring standpoint really has to get going. I'm also waiting for guys like, I asked Will Wade about this earlier today. Like, if you're looking for bench scoring, obviously you put Trey Holloman there to get a spark off the bench. You're not going to get a ton of scoring from Allen Breed. Maybe we see him step up in this stretch if you don't have Trey Holloman. But also, I'm still waiting on Matt Abel at some point to step up and be, kind of the freshman that we talked about before the season. Like, all right, if you're looking for one guy to eventually get in the starting lineup, he's going to be the guy. If you're waiting for, one guy to eventually, become kind of a bigger part of this team, he's going to be the guy. And we just really haven't seen that yet to this point. Paul McNeil went through a stretch where he struggled. He got back. So I'm not saying like Matt Abel just isn't going to get it going or anything along those lines, but like similar to what you're seeing with Darrion Williams and them really not getting him, the touches or, the share percentage that you need from him. You're not seeing that from Matt Abel to this point too. And that's something that I'm still waiting for. I didn't know if there was anybody else that you're kind of like, all right, this person really needs to get going in order for NC State to truly get going in this stretch.
No, I'm glad you talked about Matt Abel. Before the season, my co-host of the Locked On Wolfpack podcast, that's Kenton Gibbs, he listed Matt Abel as his X Factor player for this season. And I think now that we're, 15 games in, I think you can see a clear-cut reason on why that might just be the case moving forward. Whether he's going to be in the starting lineup or in most cases coming off the bench, the areas where he's been like a microwave scorer for us, that's some of the moments we've looked kind of the best, to be quite honest with you. And so we really need somebody else to step up and be that consistent leader because, if Darrion's going to struggle or continue to struggle, and by God, we certainly hope not, you're going to have to find other sources of offense. Quadier can do a lot of amazing things, but he can't do it every game by himself. Paul McNeil can heat up and hit a couple threes per game, but there's going to be games where he might hit one, maybe zero, and that'll kill you down the stretch. So I think Matt Abel is a prime suspect for somebody that's got to rise up maybe above a freshman level of play and be a dude for us. I mean, we brought him here, a four-star, five-star kid out of high school. We brought him here. Wade identified him as a dude to bring him here and play him right away. So that's somebody I am expecting a whole lot more from. And we haven't touched on Ven-Allen Lubin. He's been a pretty steady constant for us. I thought he's done a pretty solid job, to be quite honest with you. I don't know where the expectations really were in the preseason. I know UNC fans have other thoughts about that, but outside of this UVA game, I thought Ven-Allen Lubin's been really solid for us and going to need a whole lot more of that moving forward. But I certainly want to echo your point there on Matt Abel.
Yeah, and it's kind of like Brian Geisinger pointed out when we did the post-game podcast on the game against UVA. I was like, why didn't they get as many touches for Ven-Allen Lubin? Like, what was the reasoning there? Because he only took 6 shots in that game. Like, it feels like you want a higher volume. Well, they were also, playing 2 bigs for the most part throughout the game. Didn't really have, and they're one of the best shot blocking teams in the entire country. Is like they're kind of working outside in this game and hoping that the 3-point ball falls, and it just absolutely was not early on. I think they started off 1 of 9, maybe 2 of 11 or something along those lines from 3-point range, and that's just that's something that was not working out. And I think as they get into play, you're really going to need a guy like Moussa Sanye to develop into not necessarily an offensive piece, but just an efficient offensive player. Like if you can get, 4 shots out of him and he makes 3 of them, that's massive. Like that's a 6-point swing for you right there. And you're going to get what you're getting defensively from that too. I think that would be huge if you're able to get him eventually going. And another one that B. Wayne kind of pointed out here too, he said, really need Terrence Arsenault to be a decent player, especially defensively. And going back to Matt Abel, like one of the reasons why I love watching Matt Abel play for NC State is once he gets in the game, he's such a high energy defensive player. Yeah. You're not seeing that as much from Terrence Arsenault, and that's kind of something that I'm still waiting to see. Is like, all right, if you're going to struggle offensively, because I think back to there's some players during the Kevin Keatts era where there was players that struggled offensively, but you kept them out there because they needed to be you needed them out there defensively. You're just not getting really either from Terrence Arsenault right now. And obviously, he had the injury earlier on in the season, but like you're still not seeing that intensity from him. And I think if you can, I think that's why this stretch of games, these next 2 games are so critical, because you can try to figure out some things about your team. Boston College is not a good team. Florida State looked much more respectable against Duke, but they're still a team that's gotten blown out multiple times this season. So if you can get things going, you can still try to figure some things out about your team over these next 2 games. Just your thoughts on Arsenault and where things kind of swing for NC State right now over these next 2 games before they get into more of the meat of their schedule too.
Yeah, on that same topic of X factors, so Kenton's was Matt Abel, mine was Terrence Arsenault, and him coming from Houston, playing in the national championship, and to play for a Kelvin Sampson Houston team, the way they bludgeon each other in practice, I'm like, okay, this guy's going to be seasoned. He's going to be a hard-bodied guy. Defense is his calling card. He's long. He's rangy. Probably be one of our best, perimeter defenders. And I know he had some lingering, I guess, concerns about that Achilles injury that he was rehabbing from. And, since then we haven't seen a whole lot of him. I know Wade has been kind of vocal, especially at him in some of these games. And so Terrence Arsenault is another guy I would love to see more from. It's just, recently I don't know what to expect from him, but we got to find a lot of different ways to get multiple guys right. And that includes Darrion Williams. That includes Terrence Arsenault. That includes Matt Abel. That's kind of been like the theme of the year, unfortunately, up to that point. Secondly, on schedule coming up, you do have a road game against Boston College, a road game against Florida State. I want to say this as respectfully as possible, but I'm viewing those 2 games as kind of like the FCS games that state football has. Like Boston College, respectfully, I promise it's respectfully, that's like a Campbell football game. Like you got to go out and, blast them essentially. Leave no doubt. Try things that you've been struggling at. Find a way to get yourself to be a better basketball team. And of course, you want to pick up the win as well. But crucial games here coming down the stretch before you got to go on the road and see teams like Clemson or teams like SMU on the road that just picked up a big win. So the schedule gets extremely real for us once you turn the page into February. So you got to take advantage of each and every one of these opportunities to finish out the month of January, and especially the ones at home.
Yeah, those minutes for Terrence Arsenault on Saturday is 11 minutes that he played, 2 points that he scored were the first since the Texas Southern game. So it had been essentially 3 weeks since he had really played a game.
And I knew when he got in the game, I'm like, oh, Wade's not happy because here comes Terrence Arsenault. He's got something to say about somebody, I'm sure.
Well, and again, I think part of that is because of the fact that you lose a guy like Trey Holloman in the game, and you're kind of like, all right, let's try to figure out who else is going to be able to contribute here, and who else can we put out there. And so Terrence Arsenault, again, not great minutes from him overall. Shot 2 3-pointers, missed both of them. He's kind of as Miles likes to describe every once in a while, Miles Mastrocola says, if you're a make one, you're a take one player. Like if you make the first one, you can take the second. But if you miss the first one, don't take any more of those. Like you get back out there and do the thing that you're good at, instead of continuing to take one. And there's been a few players for NC State over the years that have been similar to that. But Arsenault is kind of in that ilk of, especially from the 3-point range, because I look back, the last 3 games that he's played, he's taken 5 3-pointers and missed all 5 of them. So it's just not falling for him here lately. Again, very low volume there, but it's somewhere where, if you're NC State, you mentioned Allen Bree needing to step up on Tuesday night against Boston College. But if you don't have Trey Holloman for, Tuesday and potentially Saturday, you really need a guy like Terrence Arsenault. And maybe this is the moment for him, to step up and kind of reclaim some minutes that he's, just absolutely not getting over the last few weeks. So this is an opportunity for him to try to prove himself too. Any other final thoughts on, I know I had put on that we were going to talk about recruiting in the second half, but let's just go ahead and talk about that since it is in all of this on the basketball side of things. We've got a little bit of time before we need to take a break, and then we'll talk about just football recruiting in the second half because I know a lot of people want to hear about that. As far as the basketball side of things, there was a lot of people that were pretty critical of NC State missing on Deron Rippey Jr. Last week. And him ultimately going to Duke, making that decision. Again, if you're getting upset about the fact that NC State is missing on a 5-star point guard who ranks in the top 15 in the country, then clearly Will Wade is doing something right, that he's setting your expectations that high. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that you have Matt Abel on the roster, who was a 5-star guard coming out of Florida, and then you also have added Cole Clower who's currently on the roster, not expected to play this year. He's still recovering from injury, but the recruiting that they've done, I wanted to get your thoughts on the fact that NC State did miss on Darrion Williams Jr., but also I guess realistic expectations for NC State fans, because you still got to take it with a grain of salt, the fact that you did end up getting one of the most elite guards/forwards in the entire country in Cole Kluwer in this recruiting class too.
Yeah, I mean, look, we didn't bring Will Wade to NC State and then want to, fall back on silver linings. But I will tell you this. I think you got it right there on Darrion Williams. It was bittersweet to see us not win that recruiting sweepstakes. But at the same time, how many times in the last, 10, 15 years has NC State been a finalist for the number one point guard in the country? Not too often.
Zero.
Maybe like Rob Dillingham, and then we saw how that kind of unfolded for us. Or I guess the undoing, I guess you should say. But, for NC State to be that close, and trust me when I say this, he's not going to be the last. There's going to be many more players of somewhat similar caliber that we're going to be in the mix for. And, I say this all the time on Locked On Wolfpack, but this is kind of just life in the fast lane. Wade is brought to NC State. He's going to immediately ramp up the recruiting battles. And especially when you talk about Andrew Slater, the amount of connections and knowledge he has on that front, it's only a matter of time before you get in the finals or the final five of so many, top 10, top 15, top 30 players. You're going to start hitting on some of these guys. And I mean, you look at Matt Abel, you look at Cole Kluwer, that's 2 already. So it is bittersweet to see Darrion Williams go down the street and put on a blue instead of, our favorite shade of red. But it kind of just is what it is in a sense. And I know people are disappointed. I'm disappointed too. I won't lie to you, but I have a lot of faith in Wade and Slater and the rest of the staff that every once in a while you will get that commit to come to NC State. And then once they come here, they have success, you get a couple more and you get a couple more. That's how you start building, a bigger ceiling for your program. So again, sucks to see Darrion Williams go down the street, play for Duke, but it is what it is. I have a ton of faith in Wade that we're going to start seeing a lot more talent coming down the road.
Yeah. And, kind of to go off of that too, just to give people a little bit of background here too, because I know there's a lot of people like, well, what are they going to do now? You don't have a point guard for next year. You don't have, that assurance that he's going to be coming. Obviously, you lose Trey Holloman. You're going to lose Quiddy Copeland after this year. So those are your, de facto point guards. They're going to probably look at the exact same, avenue that they did to get both of those guys, which was the transfer portal. So they'll go and look for experience there. But if you're still looking for, kind of a young piece going into next year, he's not necessarily a true point guard. But there is also a guy named King Gibson from the state of North Carolina, played with CP3, ended up going up to Spire Academy, happened to be at the John Wall this past week. NC State went out to see him every single game that he played. 6'4", again, combo guard. He's more of a scoring point guard, but that's kind of what NC State has this year. A scoring point guard and a guy that's a little bit taller at the point guard position. So it's clearly working for them right now. But King Gibson, a young guy that is technically still in the 2027 class. Sounds like he might reclassify to 2026. So, look, are you going to invest a ton in him being the starting guy next year? Probably not. But if he says he's able to reclass and is willing to, take 2 years to develop into being, potential NBA prospect in the near future, like right now he's a top 10 guard in the 2027 class. If he reclassifies, he'd probably still be inside the top 25, top 30 in the 2026 class. And so you have a chance to try to, build him up, build around him as well for, what could be the 2027 season. But again, would be an elite get if NC State is able to add him too. So definitely somebody to watch for. We've talked about him a lot on our boards here recently. Actually spoke with him last week and have a full story up. So if you haven't read that, do make sure you check that out. That last plug I'll give, because it is over by tonight, but 50% off of Pack Power 247. So if you haven't checked that out, do make sure that you do that. 6 months entirely free. It'll be over by tomorrow morning. So I'm just going to throw that out there. But all right, let's take a quick break and we'll talk about some football recruiting here on the other side. I'll clip that and flip it. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so here, let's see. Have a good one. Thank you guys so much. Let's see. Kelly asking, when do pitchers and catchers report for spring baseball? No, I don't have that, unfortunately. So
For NC State or for MLB?
Yes. I
For
believe
MLB, it's like a couple weeks, I think. 3 weeks.
Yeah, I believe for NC State, it's the exact same thing. They'll start practice, I believe, next week, if I remember.
I was gonna say it's got to be like almost now. Getting back into classes here soon. I mean, the season's like early to mid February. So, oh my God, that's like tomorrow.
Yeah, I know. So, yeah, I got to get all that figured out too. That's another aspect of all this as well. Is like, oh, we got to figure out baseball coverage too. So,
yeah, it's coming.
Yes, sir. All right, so we'll just discuss a few prospects. We'll talk about the two guys that are already committed as of right now. Let's see. Let me pull this back up.
Can I ask a question off the record?
Yeah. Well, it's not off the record. We could talk about it off the record afterwards.
Okay.
We'll talk about it afterwards because we're still technically live on air. So
I got you. Sorry, people.
Sorry, watching. All right. Let's jump right back into it. Okay. Welcome back to the Pack Power 247 podcast. Back here with Grayson, we're going to talk on the last portion of this. We'll discuss some probably the thing that over 300 people have been sitting here waiting for us to talk about. We've got several on X and several on YouTube that have been watching. Wanted to discuss NC State football recruiting. Obviously, the portal opened. I don't know if you want to I guess it's midnight Thursday night, but beginning of Friday morning. And almost instantly, it was reported that NC State was going to be hosting several recruits over the next few days. Actually, Bam Crouch, who still is actually on campus, I believe, tonight, and should be starting his official visit tomorrow. So there are some other people as well that they're still waiting on. But as of right now, the two commits that they've got, let's discuss those first up front. When you look at where NC State was able to add already. Victor Snow coming out of Buffalo, a guy that was all first-team MAC last year. Whether it was his receiving skills, his being able to carry the ball out of the backfield, obviously utilize on jet sweeps, not necessarily just setting up as a running back like KC Concepcion did 2 years ago. But then also the fact that he's a great punt returner, a guy that can add a ton there as well. Just your thoughts on that addition and what it means for NC State, because they did need, somebody at the slot receiver position going into next year too.
Yeah, certainly getting off on the right foot. And I expected the majority of the focus to be the offensive line. And I think that is still true, but to pick up a speedy in every sense of the word commitment from Victor Snow here, don't Google him or don't look him up on YouTube. I don't know what that play was. And if you've seen it, but hopefully the staff got an answer about whatever that was.
All I can say is he hit all of his props. Like, come on, guys. He hit every
hope it was worth it, brother.
Maybe an anytime touchdown score. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, whatever that was. But no, what's interesting about Victor Snow is that's the kind of player I would have loved to have this year. I think he could have been dynamite in the slot with CJ Bailey and all the other weapons around him. He'd be a lot to account for. 4.4, 4.5 speed can go at the word go at the drop of a hat. So I like that pickup a lot so far, and we'll see how he kind of develops in the offense coming up next year with Kurt Roper. But I think 1 for 1 so far. I think Victor Snow might just be a pretty fun little feature to the offense next year.
Yeah, 1 for 1 on the playmakers, but also 1 for 1 so far when it comes to, you needed to replace one. You need to replace multiple at the wide receiver position. So you're still waiting to probably find out some more. They're also, they're expecting to have Teddy Hoffman back. They're expecting to have Keenan Jackson back, and they're expecting to get a couple others back at the wide receiver position that they like for next year. But as far as the offensive tackle, I mean, you're going from the low of Jacarius Peak officially announcing that he was going to go in the transfer portal on Sunday night, which was somewhat expected. I mentioned it on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, on Sunday night that NC State did everything they possibly could. Like, they went to the highest point they could in terms of monetary value. But ultimately, if you're trying to keep the roster intact, if you're trying to keep as many players as you can, they simply couldn't go to another level when it comes to that. And he enters the transfer portal. So far, sounds like Texas A&M is the team that's trending for him. probably see guys like, some other teams like Texas Tech and, all the usuals also enter the mix there. Wouldn't be surprised if Miami gives them a call or somebody along those lines. But, as of right now, it sounds like Texas A&M. The very next day, NC State is able to, add a guy in Jamarian McCrimmon out of ECU. Now, talking to some other people behind the scenes, he's a little bit more of a raw prospect, somebody that's still, learning the position. I mean, I will say this, like, if you want to watch good film on him, don't watch the NC State game last year. He kind of got his ass handed to him by NC State. Kean Sloan, Sebastian Harsh, they played really well, whichever side they were on against him. But if you look at the last, I think it was 8 games of last season, he only gave up 7 total pressures in those games. And there was multiple games where he had 0 total pressures allowed. And again, this is a team that throws the ball a ton in ECU, and he wasn't allowing any pressure. So I do like the addition there. Do I think he's going to instantly come in and just be Jacarius Peak and you're going to plug him at left tackle and you're going to be great? No, but I really like that addition. And also the fact that he just, again, he's somebody that needs to learn, somebody that wants to get better at the position. And Garrett Touche has shown that he can develop guys in those positions. Obviously, you wish that you had a Jacarius Peak to be able to go to the NFL as opposed to, potentially going to Texas A&M. But it sounds really good that you're able to bring these types of guys in and continue to develop them and get them better for this upcoming season.
Listen, man, if a raw prospect is a first-team all-conference player, I think I'll just take my chances with that. So Jamarian McCrimmon, look on paper, again, this looks like a pretty solid pickup for NC State. Very bittersweet to see Jacarius Peak go, and I do think many of us, myself included, thought that the NFL draft would be the next step for him. So if he does end up signing somewhere else and playing another year of college football, it might sting a little bit to see him play somewhere else. And the value for him will most certainly be there. He's a good player. He was very good for us and certainly expect that, he will continue to develop moving forward. But for NC State, easy come, easy go almost. I mean, I think you're in a pretty good spot here picking up McCrimmon. Perhaps you pick up a couple other players, maybe return some players that you were, already had from last year. I think the offensive line will be fine. I really do like this pickup from McCrimmon. I can only imagine that Touje's fired up because I think he's my favorite guy to watch tweet that we have a new commitment. It's always something different. Stacking paper, he said today. Love that. So, McCrimmon, I think it's going to be a very solid get for us, whether that's left tackle or right tackle. We might have to figure that out with Teague Anderson, assuming that Teague does return to us. So, I think this is a great pickup. Both of them, actually, 2 for 2.
Yeah, I mean, they also had Carson Cassidy over the weekend. We mentioned him earlier. We'll wait to see what his decision is ultimately. He also took a official visit to West Virginia today. And then Delvin Morris, a little bit more of a versatile offensive lineman. He's a guy that technically profiles as a guard, but is 6'3", 290 pounds. So you'd like to see him stick to the guard position as opposed to having to plug him in or try to work him in at the tackle position. It does sound like Teague Anderson still continuing to trend back towards NC State. So we'll see. And Spike Souls the same way. I know Michael Clark has mentioned them multiple times on our boards, also talked about them in the Coffee with Corey that we did this morning. So it does sound like, you got the makings of a good, starting offensive line. I also still love Rico Jackson, what he showed last year. So we'll see if they're able to continue to be able to kind of bring those guys back and keep trying to form, what could be a really strong offensive line for next season. But, you're looking at a couple others. You also really need to add at the tight end position. They're bringing in a guy from UConn, not the UConn tight end that you might have thought of, but the guy behind him that was actually a better blocker, and Alex Honig. So we'll see, ultimately what they're able to do there. But, I wanted to ask you too, I mean, just your thoughts on looking forward, like what are the positions of need that you want to see NC State fill more so than anything, and you feel like are the absolute must-haves? Because there's a few positions where you still have depth and you still have guys, if you look at like the safety position, you love to add a safety, but you also had Tristan Teasdale coming back. You also had, a couple others that might be coming back. I wasn't talking about Justin Jolie. I was talking about the guy that transferred from NC State and went to UConn this past year in Juice Vereen. But just your thoughts on other positions where, NC State really needs to be able to, to add as of right now, like the absolute must-haves that you need to go out and get.
Well, we know that CJ Bailey was 1-1, or if it wasn't going to be CJ, then quarterback position would have been 1-1. So very thankful that we got that sorted out before the portal opened, because, we know how NC State fans are. You give us, an extended wait to have to wonder if a player's going to come back or not, we will drive ourselves insane. So got that figured out. After that, my focus immediately goes to that offensive line, and whether that's retaining players or picking up some of your top targets, like maybe they've already done now with recruitment from ECU. Offensive line, my take is this: you got to build it around CJ, and the rest will kind of fall into place after that. I feel good about the running back room, assuming that Duke Scott returns. I feel good about the wide receiving core, assuming that you do retain the majority of them, plus with the addition now of Victor Snow. And I have to imagine they'll probably add another wide receiver or two. But the offensive line, it's going to start up front. The two J's don't say big men lead for nothing. They mean it. It's because it matters in this offense. And I think the way that the offensive line really took a step forward this year, and you had nearly an 1,000-yard rusher with Hollywood Smothers, and Duke Scott was a very formidable back behind him. We had a better run game this year, and you have to credit the offensive line in achieving that. Not to mention CJ threw for 3,000 yards. If CJ's on his behind all the time, that wouldn't be possible. So the offensive line was a step forward this year, and that needs to be a main focus after that. Number 3, I go to the opposite side, the defensive line. Get me some edge rushers. Obviously, with Kean Sloan moving on, I think Sebastian Harsh is going to come back. I don't know if that's official or not, but certainly hope that will be the case. We need some edge rushers. And, I thought the defense, certainly in the back half of the season, they did a better job forcing some QB pressure and, forcing a little havoc there, especially in the games of consequence like that Georgia Tech game. But, edge rushers is something that we've kind of lacked here at NC State for the last couple of years. And I know the 3-3-5 was a little bit different in the way you wanted to force some pressure, but I want to get back to some sacks. I want to get back to some forced fumbles there in the backfield. So edge rushers for me. Then after that, I go to linebackers. You obviously lose Caden Fordham. You're looking a little thin at the linebacking position there. I think the next focus right after the other 3, you gotta shore up that defense.
Yeah, I mean, the only other one I would add to that, probably the tight end position, just given how successful it was this past year. Not only from, Justin Jolie's standpoint, what he was able to do as a receiver. And, maybe you have that on the roster. Maybe Dante Daniels, if he's able to return, takes that next step. But we haven't seen that from him from a volume standpoint. Maybe, a guy like Preston Douglas that, as a freshman got some time on the field. We'll see, and also still love Gus Ritchie and the potential that he brings. And if you're able to, see him take a step up, maybe he adds that. But I still feel like, from you're kind of missing that mauler that you had in Cody Hardy, and you don't really have that, that real move tight end that you had in Justin Jolie for the last several years. So they really need to be able to find ways to replace that as well. And I agree with you. I think, from a defensive standpoint, I want to see better edge rushers. I mean, you really need to replace a lot along the defensive line. I mean, Chase Bond stepped up a lot this past season. You also saw some other guys step up from again, like some young D linemen step up, but are you going to ask those guys to really take that much of a leap from being, second and third guys in the rotation to being the guy next year? I just don't think that's necessarily possible. So I do think they still need to add more guys as far as the defensive line is concerned, and a little bit more as edge rusher. As far as Isaiah Shirley, I do think he's planning on coming back next season. He has a chance to, again, you're waiting on some of these guys to take that next step. Like I liked what you saw from Isaiah Shirley this year, but again, he's a guy that's been kind of like a potential breakout player for several years now, and just really hasn't had that breakout season yet. So if those guys are going to step up, then you feel better about your defensive line. But you just, as of right now, you cannot take any risks. Like you have to be able to go out and add as many guys as you can right now at all those different positions, because you don't have a spring transfer portal window. Like that's why this, and I will say this too, it's something Michael and I were talking about earlier, is the fact that this week in particular is extremely critical for NC State, because of the fact that next week could get very dicey. There's going to be a lot of teams like Alabama, like Florida State, like SMU, like Texas Tech, Texas A&M, like these teams that just have boatloads of money and they're going to miss on guys this week. They're not going to have guys that they need to get, and they might lose some players to the transfer portal. They're going to get desperate, and they're going to start going after some players that, NC State might have felt really good about, and they might have had coming in for visits, and all of a sudden they cancel those visits. I mean, there's been more canceled flights for teams across the country than there has been actually booked ones that they follow through on. So it's not just an NC State problem. It's all the way across the country because teams are, getting kids on campus and they're committing. And yeah, as Cal mentioned here, that, almost 5,000 players already in the portal. And you don't know what the future is going to hold for NC State players either. You saw it last year. Like, you lost the entire secondary the day before the transfer portal closed. And you absolutely cannot afford that this year. I think that's why this week is so critical to add players at positions of need, but also add as many depth players as you can that you feel comfortable with to be able to put together this roster. Because the only other time you're going to be able to add players is going to be the late signing period. Like in February, you're going to be able to add players from high school ranks, but those are not transfer portal players. Those are not veteran players that you're able to bring in and be able to add right away that you feel like can actually help you in spring, fall, and into the season.
Yeah, and Kent and I actually discussed this concept exactly on our Monday podcast with there only being one singular portal window, and it's like a week and a half. This feels like musical chairs, but it's on like 3x speed, and it's probably like yakety sax playing in the background. It's absolute chaos this year, and so it's so vital that NC State is getting some of these first visits or maybe these first commitments before they have a chance to look anywhere else, kind of like McCrimmon from ECU. So this week, I fully agree. It's complete chaos, and it is chaos. I love that you hammered this point home. It's chaos for everyone, except for maybe SIG in Indiana, because I guess they just get whoever they want nowadays, which is nuts in itself. But yeah, it's NC State is moving at a breakneck pace, and to already pick up 2 commitments at positions of need, I think they're progressing well right now. So certainly have to see. I guess keep your head on a swivel. Although moving at a breakneck pace, you might break your neck this week because there's just so many names, so many visits, so many announcements. It's left, right, center. But I think some of the momentum, not to change the subject here, but some of the momentum finishing the season 8-5 with the bowl win, I think NC State's in a pretty decent spot right now. They have something to sell for themselves, some, to end the season on a right note. The schedule next year in 2026, not to put the cart in front of the horse, but in my opinion, I think it looks pretty favorable. So NC State, I think they're in a pretty good spot here. They just got to be able to keep up with the speed of everything.
Yeah, some of the other guys to watch out for too. We mentioned Bam Crouch earlier. He's supposed to be on an official visit on Tuesday. Gavin Harris, he's obviously a linebacker position that we mentioned last week. Gavin Harris, tight end from New Mexico State, will definitely be somebody to watch as well. And then we talked about on the boards, Jaden Jones, another one from Florida State, defensive end. You're talking about, needing edge rushers. He was a guy that was a standout at Hutchinson Community College before he got to Florida State. Didn't get as much playing time, but could be definitely somebody to watch in the near future. King Mack at the safety position that NC State hosted today. And then one that I really like, another one that I really like is Junior Sia from Utah State, offensive lineman, happens to be 6'5", 325 pounds. So when you talk about grown-ass man, like that is the dude right there. And, also certainly doesn't hurt that last year he happened to be teammates with current starting right tackle for NC State and Teague Anderson. So maybe they end up, flipping back to their roles that they had 2 years ago at Utah State, where Junior Sia was, being looked at as potential starting left tackle. But, again, you've already added Jamarian McCrimmon. So we'll see ultimately where things end up. But I really like, the way that, again, you're continuing to go after a ton of dudes to make sure that you have every spot filled. So, all right, last thing, Grayson, before we head out of this thing, man, is there any other thing that you're looking forward to over the next week before NC State really obviously, we talked about basketball. We talked about, and actually, I take that back. Joseph mentioned something strong here too. How about JUCOs? Any ideas there? Yeah, you still can add guys from the JUCO ranks, just the same as you can from the, when it comes to players from high school. So yes, you can still add JUCO players as well. We'll see if NC State ultimately targets some more. Maybe they have some on the back burner that you're like, all right, if we miss on a couple kids here, we'll circle back there. Don't really know exactly where that stands right now, but we'll probably find out over the next month and a half. But anything else that you're looking forward to over the next week, Grayson, and when it comes to NC State?
I'm looking forward to having a lot more faith in Will Wade. And again, I know it's been frustrating. I think everyone would agree on that, but we didn't get this guy and essentially have like a proverbial parade for him to get here to then just kind of give up and kick the can down the road just 15 games in. We brought him for a reason. He was brought here to change the dynamic of NC State basketball. And until that is not the case, I'm going to be on that wagon till those wheels fall off. And so they got a lot of work still to be done. We got to get some players in the right mindset, get them back on track. But I still have a ton of faith in this team. There's some pieces that are really clicking, a lot of other pieces that are not clicking quite yet, but there's time. And the goals that Wade set out, that's the top 4 finish in the ACC and making the NCAA tournament. Until that's off the table, it's on the table. And there's several people that don't want to hear that, and I fully get it. But again, I have faith in this team. I have faith in Wade, faith in the staff. It's only a matter of time before I do think they will get this right.
Yeah, and again, I mean, there's been a lot of questions about was the roster miscalculated? Did you invest too much money in Darrion Williams? I'm looking forward to. I agree with you. I'm looking forward to hopefully over the next few weeks, seeing all those guys truly kind of develop into their roles. And I think that's part of what you're missing right now is guys not buying into their roles just yet. But as we see those guys develop, and I've also been told that with the Terrence Arsenault situation, there's been a lot of push from Wade, and he's kind of released the reins a little bit to allow him some breathing room because he knows what his potential is. And I think we're going to hopefully start seeing that in the near future. And again, the same thing with Darrion Williams. He's making winning plays, but once that shot develops, once you're given the opportunity to kind of get the green light again, I think we're going to see some of these guys really get going. I love the roster the way it's developed. I just think right now you're just waiting on several players to start living up to their potential and that we expected beforehand. So we'll see ultimately if that's able to happen and what that leads to, because as we know, the back half of the schedule, several Q1, Q2 opportunities for NC State, both at home and on the road, to be able to build that resume. And as I believe it's infatuate by you. Okay. Infatuated. Yeah. There we go. Infatuated. There we go. I had to read that all the way through first. It says it takes time for a team to gel. There'll be ups and downs. And yeah, I mean, look, you're going through one of the downs right now, but it's immediately after a big up where you win an in-state game against Wake Forest. Now you have to go find one of those on the road and find more on the road, because if you want to win, if you want to get to the NCAA tournament, it feels like this team needs to get to at least a 10-8 record in ACC play to feel good before you get to Charlotte for the ACC tournament. Now it's about finding some road wins early on in the season so that you can stack those and feel good once you get back to Lenovo Center to try to win some of these games. And last thing I wanted to throw up here, Mal did add as well, said, grateful for you two. Pack Power and Locked On Sports are the ones that I truly trust for Pack Sports News. So we appreciate you, Mal. And I've had several conversations with Mal in the past, so I appreciate her for jumping on. I know she's a pretty loyal fan for you guys too. So, all right, Grayson, anything else you want to plug before we sign off here? Where can people follow you? If they don't follow Locked On podcast, where can they find you guys at, man?
You can find us everywhere, but mainly on YouTube. It's Locked On Wolfpack. But if you're a Spotify person, we're on Spotify. Apple Music, we're over there as well. You can find us on Twitter at LO_Wolfpack. I didn't make it, but that's what it is. My personal Twitter is gboone_. You can find me on there as well. Be sure to follow Kenton as well. He's TGIF Kenton, one of the best Twitter handles out there. Again, if you've not ever heard Kenton speak, it's worth the price of admission, which is free. He's a hoot. He knows ball. He loves NC State just like I do, and we love doing the show together.
Yeah, I love Kenton, man. I've had several conversations with him up in the press box. Also, just listening to him on the podcast.
One of a kind.
Obviously. Yeah, exactly. All right, well. Again, thank you to Grayson for jumping on. Thank you to everybody here at Amedeo's. And thank you to Amedeo's for housing the podcast. We appreciate each and every single one of you. We're signing off now from the Pack Power podcast. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you again soon.
Go Pack.